The railroad, the South Pennsylvania Railroad is here. Let's see if we can get inside here. Look at this.
Which doesn't make any sense for the word borrowing being the fact that I'm never going to return it.
Alright friends, it is a good morning. It is a beautiful spring day here in Pennsylvania. We're packing up the truck. We're taking bicycles on this adventure. We're not 100% certain if we're going to be using them or not because we've left some things in the hands of our tour guide for this adventure, so we really don't know what we're doing because I told him, well, let's go see the most interesting things first and see where we make it. We also have to figure out how to put a generator in here because we are going to the Buchanan State Forest. That much I do know for certain. We're camping this weekend at Site 25 in Buchanan State Forest, which is over off of Oregon Road near Sideling Hill. So if that gives you some hint as to the things that we'll be doing, we'll just have to wait and see where the weekend takes us. What are your thoughts on?
I'm just ready to get out and go camping. And it looks like it's going to be a really nice weekend weather-wise.
So it's like the middle of April, and it's like 80-some degrees outside, which is unseasonably warm, but it's also dry, so we're not allowed to have campfires.
I heard on the radio this morning, again, there's another really big fire somewhere out east.
Normally, there is a policy, Pennsylvania State Forest, I think it starts in March and goes all the way through May. You're not allowed to have fires without approval. But obviously there will be no approval given for this weekend. So.
Yep, so we got to plan cooking around that. No campfire cooking this weekend.
One thing I definitely want to mention when it comes to the Buchanan State Forest is there are no picnic tables at the site. So we have behind our camp chairs here, we've got this big white table that we're taking. We're going to have to stash that in the camper because there won't be any room in the truck by the time we get bicycles and a generator in there and the dogs. This is going to be a different sort of video probably than what you're used to seeing from us because we are going with someone else. We're going to be learning a lot about history and, you know, the history of the area that we're camping in. I don't want to give away too much just yet. Here, as soon as Sarah gets home from school, we're headed out. So friends, we've figured out how to get the bicycles and stuff in here, and we should be all set and ready to go. Just got to get the generator in here, which is kind of my next priority, and a can of gas to run the generator. But this is definitely one of the reasons why we picked the Champion is because it's smaller and it's lighter. And so, not that the truck is limited on payload, we've got plenty of that, but the size, the physical size of the generator is a major plus for us. So we're gonna get this in here, and then, like I said, we'll be hitting the road here shortly. Generally, friends, for the first trip of the year, we do try to stick close to home just to kind of get our feet wet, and you know, if we forget something, hopefully Rachel didn't forget anything. She's kind of in charge of...
We'll find out, won't we?
Yeah, we'll find.
We're 20 minutes from home, so I'm sure it'll be fine.
Where we're going in the Buchanan State Forest, probably if you're coming to these sites, you'll be coming in a different way, but we're coming over on 915, which is pretty steep grade. I wouldn't really recommend coming this way.
This goes over to 30, so the other way we could have gone was through Breezewood, but nobody likes driving through Breezewood, so that's why we went this way.
Well, yeah, those traffic lights are miserable. We're boondocking, obviously, so we're going to explore the site and plan an entrance and plan an exit so we avoid a repeat of
the last time we were boondocking.
The last boondocking thing. But then also, our tour guide, that's what we're going to call him for now, he may be there already. He's going to be joining us at some point this afternoon and staying potentially all weekend. He's basically the one who discovered everything that we're going to be showing you this weekend. So this will be really good because we're going to get the whole history straight from the horse's mouth, basically. I shouldn't say discovered, but rediscovered, you know, all the history in the area. So that's what we're doing. Okay, friends, so we have made it to our campsite, as you can see per the signage, which is very well marked. Now, I do not know if I need to back up this road, which that could be sort of a challenge. Last time we were out at the Tuscarora Forest, we couldn't turn around in the site, and it made it for quite difficult experience. And I don't want to deal with that again. So, no, friends, this looks pretty wide open. I feel like if I can't turn around at this one, then maybe we shouldn't be doing this boondocking thing. The State Forest website says that this road may be a little bit challenging to get up, but it definitely isn't. Now, there are several other sites around here. 26 we passed just a little bit ago, and that looks like a nice site as well. And then if you keep going down this road, eventually you'll come to what they call the Oregon Ball Field, and that is a DCNR site as well, and I believe capable of handling quite a few rigs. It just didn't look as woodsy, so that's why we chose here instead. All right, so friends, this is Russ. I don't know your last name.
Love, like I love you.
Russ Love. And he has a group on Facebook called the South Pennsylvania Railroad and the Pennsylvania Turnpike. And so you've been collecting stuff on this for like 30 years, you said?
30 years. I started in 1993.
So, I mean, he's kind of the one who discovered a lot of the things that we're going to go see tomorrow. And obviously you guys know Sarah. Tomorrow we're going to go see the viaduct. And
No viaduct. Quit calling it viaduct.
it's a culvert.
Culvert.
Stone culvert.
Right.
And some other things with the railroad grade and the abandoned turnpike tunnels. So that's the plan, and we'll see you guys in the morning. So friends, from a location standpoint, if you want to know where we are, we're on Oregon Road, and this is where it passes under the turnpike, the old abandoned turnpike here. And the railroad arch trail, I believe, starts right up there. Friends, over the course of this trip and these couple episodes, however many it turns out to be, we're looking at almost 300 years of history in the area here, right? So you got Braddock's Trail, or at least the supply line for Braddock's Trail, which some of you may think of Braddock's Road as going from Cumberland to Pittsburgh. The supply lines was actually coming from, you said Harrisburg or Philly?
Actually Philadelphia, and then ended up going through Carlisle, and then eventually to Chambersburg, and then Chambersburg to Fort Loudon up through Cohen's Gap, over to Fort Littleton, and eventually to the cove on the other side of the Sideling Hill. But we're actually on the west side of the tunnel right now.
So after Braddock would have came General Forbes, and that's all over on the other side of the tunnel. So we're going to hopefully go look at that. So then after all of that, you would have had the South Pennsylvania Railroad, which is the grade that we're going to look at here.
Over that way is the old turnpike, but we're going south, starting to climb the hill to reach the arch culvert, which is the South Pennsylvania Railroad up this way.
Okay.
And of course Oregon would be in between the two.
And then there was also a logging railroad in this area, the Reichley brothers, which would have went right through here.
Paralleling, but to the west of the underpass.
So there's a lot of transportation history when it comes to this area, and so you guys know that's something I'm very passionate about. And when I found out about the South Pennsylvania Railroad and that large portions of the unfinished grade still exist, and the work that was never laid track or anything like that,
still under construction, still places where unfinished, crossing ravines, still looks rough, like they should finish it.
Yeah. So this is the Dynamite shed. You'll see it on several maps and things about exploring this area. they would have tried to keep this away from things that they were working on so that it would be safe, obviously. Now we're not 100% certain if that's where they kept dynamite that they would have been using for the Sideling Hill tunnel, but we were just talking about they could have been using dynamite for various things, such as blowing up tree stumps. Would have been, I think, on the other side of Rays Hill tunnel. They blew up a tree stump and it actually ended up several hundred yards away in the roof of somebody's house. So back in the 1800s, they wouldn't have had the heavy equipment like we do now. So they used dynamite for anything and everything. So yeah, that's what that shed back there would have been used, is for storing the dynamite. So there would have been a quarry just up here.
Yeah, we'll see it.
And that would have been what, for the stone work?
And they probably would have used the dynamite for that too.
Okay.
Okay, we'll see little depressions where you can see the stone
Okay.
being worked on.
So friends, I want to try to capture this in the best way possible, but as you can see, we've got the stone culvert here. They brought in people from Switzerland, but you were also saying people from Italy, Irish, so a wide variety of people that were brought in from Europe to build this. And the incredible thing about this is there is no mortar whatsoever holding this together. This is just all cut and stacked stone with dirt packed on top of it. Now, look way up there. That's the railroad grade. So, I mean, remember, this is all incomplete. Never laid track. Obviously, you couldn't. But they were going to fill this whole valley in behind me. So, like, if you see right over top of my head, that's the grade. Across. And I can't really see where it ends up. It should be over that way. Now, Russ was just telling me that he measured the culvert and it's over 200 feet long. So
look at the creek. Look how the bed is lined.
Yeah, I mean the creek bed is all lined, and I'm gonna get down here just in a second. But I just wanted to show you the mass amount of fill that they would have had to bring in, and that's why it's 200 feet long. Your railroad tracks is only going to be 4 foot wide, but you need this 200 foot long span to build a pyramid up to the tracks to hold them up. And they didn't want to build bridges, so they brought in fill. So you've got the stonework on the base of this thing. I mean, you can see, friends, it's 200 feet long. I'm an idiot and I forgot my flashlight. I wanted to take you in here, and I probably still will, but lighting might be questionable. But you can see, and I don't know, maybe the camera's picking it up, but Rachel is over on the other side waving. But actually, with this wide angle lens, it does seem like it's picking up the light fairly well. But friends, as you can see, there's no mortar here. And this is how they built things back in the day. And you got to figure this is late 1800s. So you're looking at 130 years that this has been here and held together with no mortar. It's incredibly impressive. 1885 was when they stopped the construction, and we're going to talk about that here in just a second, probably. So let's see if we can get inside here. The water's pretty deep. There you go. Look at this. And it's just like moss holding it together. But if you can imagine, friends, you'd have this great pyramid of dirt and fill on top of this thing. I don't think I can. I think it's too deep.
That's amazing stuff. I really love that floor.
It is, and the camera actually is picking it up pretty well. The stone floor here. So this is us standing here on top of it. Russ is over there for kind of size and perspective. But again, that mountain, just you can see it just over my head. That's going to be your railroad grade. And then of course it would have continued over to there somewhere. Now, right back there, and I'm going to hop on over there. That's the quarry that they used for the stonework for this that we're standing on. So let me see if I can't get over there. All right, so here we are. This is, you can see this is a pit into the side of the hill here. And we're talking late 1800s here, right? So you got to use the resources of the land around you. If you have any idea where we're at, it's the Buchanan State Forest is obviously, we're in the middle of nowhere. And so it's not like they could truck supplies in or anything. Like, and there was no machinery or anything like that. You used the resources that you had, the rocks on the site, chisel them out of the side of the hill, put them together in a culvert. This is also a good spot to get some perspective of the length of this thing, right? That's the beginning of it, and there it is, going the whole way. 200 feet, friends. This is some exciting stuff, and again, I'm very appreciative of having Russ here. His Facebook group, South Pennsylvania Railroad and the Pennsylvania Turnpike. Whoops. I will link to that in the description of this video so that you can easily find it if this is something you're interested in. He goes by the name on there of Frank Clement, who was one of the surveyors for the South Pennsylvania Railroad. And he was the surveyor in this area here. He had 90 miles of territory. I guess he was the best of the best when it came to the South Pennsylvania, because generally the surveyors were only given 30 miles, and this fellow was given 90 because he was so well liked. But again, here's another good view of that pyramid shape of fill. This was all brought in here with horses and wagons.
Well, you're going to see where this dirt came from.
So just the amount of work that it would have taken to do this. And you know, I'm kind of standing here for scale, but it's hard to capture, but it's a big pile of dirt.
I'm going to say it's about, at the end down, it's about 35 feet high.
This is the north side of the fill. And there's this stone. Basically, it looks to us, to Russ and I, like it might have been the base of a monument. So surveyors and the people that were building the railroad would have used structures like this to draw lines and make sure that they were building things in the correct way within the borders of the land that they had and what they had legal rights to do, but also they were trying to keep it level the whole way across, so they could have shot, you know, a level from here to the opposite side.
See, I could see the green culvert down there.
Okay, I see it.
See it? You could almost see the end of the green ends down there. That's the end of the culvert, which lines up with this.
Okay.
So yeah, I think this is a perimeter line.
So yeah, they would have put equipment here to
maybe keep that north side and everything work to the south that they were going to measure from.
But it's very, very interesting how they did things back in the day. And so if we look that way,
you can see the cut there.
That's where they got the dirt for the fill that is behind me now. So they were trucking it all this way with wagons and horses and things of that nature, because they wouldn't have wasted anything. And like I said down there, they used everything that was in the area that they were, because they couldn't get it from elsewhere.
They get it from the countryside. They even actually had borrowing banks, which doesn't make any sense for the word borrowing being the fact that they're never going to return it.
Yeah.
But they had borrowing banks where they would actually get off the property, dig out the hill, and use that dirt to help fill.
Okay.
But they never really wanted it.
friends, we were just talking about, you know how a lot of times we go to all these historic places, you know, we've been to Staple Bend Tunnel and we've been to different canals and different things. And I always talk about the amount of work that it took to do things back in the day. And all of those projects that we've been to date, they were used for the intended purpose that they were built for, right? So like all those were, and some of them very short-lived projects. The canals weren't around long. The railroads kind of killed the canals.
Yes.
But we were just talking about like this project here, because we reached a dead end in the grade where it was unfinished. And so, you know, how would you have liked to have been a worker working on this railroad for a little over a year and digging every day, and then all of a sudden you show up for work one day and they're saying, well, we're not doing this anymore, we're done.
September of 1885.
September 1885. That was it. That was the end of the project.
Now, they were some of them really believed in this with their full heart. They stayed in the area, and they actually, one guy who was in charge of the employees, Houston town, he actually stayed there. Other people stayed as long as they could, borrowing money off of him giving it to them, thinking he's going to get the money back because this railroad is going to turn back on again. It never happened.
So we've talked about, we spent a good bit of time talking yesterday, but I haven't told you guys is, if you do any sort of light reading on the subject, they're going to say, well, this was Vanderbilt's failure or whatever. But he has documentation basically saying that Vanderbilt never wanted this railroad completed or to ever really become an operation. This was his way of threatening the Pennsylvania.
It was a threat against George Roberts, president of the Pennsylvania Railroad, who was backing another railroad up in New York that was moving into Vanderbilt's territory.
Okay.
So Vanderbilt came down here in retaliation and started pouring money into this whole thing in hopes that the Pennsylvania Railroad would say, you're actually doing work and that's going to hurt us. So they got into bitter arguments.
Okay.
And later, now from what I understand, Vanderbilt sold a lot of his stocks to J.P. Morgan buying them up, but he was not aware of this.
Okay.
So when he went over to Europe, of course, as an investor, he was trying to get those Europeans to invest in the New York Central.
Okay.
Not realizing that the New York Central stocks were going to go down.
Okay.
So while he's over there, they said, why should we invest in your railroad, which is New York Central? But even though Vanderbilt owned the majority of the stock still, even by 1%, they said, why should we invest in New York Central when a new railroad in Pennsylvania is being built?
Yeah.
And he's like, what? So next thing you know, he hurried up back here. Trust me, if they would have had planes back then, he'd have been on the first flight back. But instead he had to stew in this new information that he was unaware of.
Yeah.
Coming across the ocean, which took him, what, a month?
Yeah, long time.
Let's even say 2 weeks, okay?
Long time.
He gets back here, he pulls Vanderbilt into his office and says, what are you doing? You sold me these stocks. I'm thinking I'm got into a big investment because you don't screw around with Morgan.
Yeah.
He said, I didn't want to start this railroad. I said, it was just the only thing I could do to get the Pennsylvania Railroad out of my territory. And he says, okay, I can see how you're really into not wanting this. Leave it alone, stay out of it. He got Roberts on his boat, and he wouldn't let him off the boat until they brokered a deal where this would become Pennsylvania Railroad, and West Shore would become New York Central.
Okay.
That would be okay for New York Central to get to West Shore because they were, like I told you yesterday, crisscrossing almost each other. This down here, like the end of a Tootsie Roll, the only connection was east and west. Anything in between is a separate alignment. Pennsylvania wasn't allowed to keep this.
Okay.
So it sat for 50 years. Okay. So that's a drill bit hole. It was cut in this way.
So friends, here's another box culvert. This is obviously a lot smaller than the stone arch culvert that we've seen back there, but culvert number 2 coming from the west. Again, you can see he's up there on the hill. This is all fill brought in from a little bit behind us. Good. So friends, you probably didn't know that today you were going to get a lesson in engineering, but the way they built these gaps is they started on each end and worked towards the center, which is what you see here. And then of course there's a culvert down here, which I'm going to try to get you to. And then of course this fence here that you see would have been for the turnpike, the abandoned turnpike. The abandoned turnpike, just like the interstates now, they would keep people off the road, people and other such things. The other thing Russ was telling me is they built these fill areas in shelves. So they did, just like you see in the other culvert over there, they did the bottom shelf first, and then another layer, and then another layer, which is where the track would have been. There's your culvert. And actually, if I can get in there with the phone usually picks up pretty well in low light situations, so it's not bad that I'm using this anyway. But, I mean, just think about the massive undertaking. I mean, look, way up there, friends. That's the railroad grade that they're trying to fill in. I mean, that's, to me, it looks like at least 50 feet above where I'm at. I don't know. It's a long way. This is a longer culvert because it goes at an angle through the fill. So like if you look, I'm pointed at an angle. I'm right on line with the culvert. So we're here up at the top of the other side. So if you remember a few minutes ago, it'd be hard to pick up because there's a lot of stuff in the way. It's up and then over the other side. I was under the impression from stories of the past, which are clearly inaccurate, that the turnpike wiped out all of, I didn't know it was called the South Pennsylvania Railroad at the time, but I knew the turnpike followed a railroad route, and I would have made the assumption that if it was built, or close to being built, I would have thought that the turnpike followed it exactly and wiped it all out. You can clearly see that that's not the case. The turnpike, or at least the original route of the turnpike, is over there. I'd say that's 100 yards away from here where we're at, standing on the railroad grade. And the surveys on Russ's page clearly indicate this as well. I mean, they loosely follow each other, but the turnpike was mainly just interested in the tunnels, which of course here you have Sideling Hill and Rays Hill. On the abandoned section, the turnpike completely bypassed. We'll maybe get into that in next week's video. So the South Pennsylvania Railroad is here, and this clearly would have had to been wider, this top layer, because it's not 4 feet wide at the top for track. And this was supposed to be a very modern railroad, comparatively to what was around in the late 1800s. Rachel's going to get the truck, and she is going to meet us back at the CCC camp. Hopefully, when we get to the CCC camp, I'm going to film some stuff there, and that'll be next week's episode, but I'm going to kind of cut this one off here because I think it's probably long enough. So make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, and then go check out the Facebook page, South Pennsylvania Railroad. The link is in the description. And we'll see you next week.